My family sneered the moment I walked into my father's funeral, but when the lawyer opened the will, the smirks died on their faces. The envelope bore no return address, only my name, scrawled in sharp, bitter strokes I knew too well. That is my father's handwriting. I almost tossed it in the trash with the flyers and bills, until something in my chest told me to look closer. My hands trembled as I broke the seal. Part dread, part instinct. It was an invitation to a funeral. My father's. I stared at the invitation, waiting for rage, grief, anything, but felt only silence blooming inside. 10 years of silence, a full decade since I escaped Charleston and the family name that carried more venom than love. They'd cast me out the day I stopped playing by their rules. I remember the day I drove away like it was carved into bone. Maria barely a few months old in the back seat, my lips split, suitcase packed with more diapers than hope. I had finally escaped the man who shattered more than bones. He shattered who I was. But instead of arms, my father offered me judgment. You chose this path, he said, as if my pain were a decision. But I didn't crumble. I started over in Wilmington, a modest life, tucked in quiet streets, but finally safe. I found a job stacking books in the local library, read fairy tales to Maria at night, and slowly remembered how to breathe, even though my father never called, never asked, never said, sorry. I still sent money each month through old Mr. Gerald next door. I made sure he had groceries, heating, his prescriptions. No one knew, not even Maria. Now I held that envelope like it might burn, wondering, why now? Why reach for the daughter you buried in silence for 10 years? Maria must have noticed the shift in my face. He stepped closer and asked, You think you'll go? I couldn't speak. My throat locked up. I just stared at the crisp print, like it might rearrange itself into something gentler. Then Maria said, soft but certain, Maybe he didn't just leave behind a will, Mom. Maybe there's something else. Something for you. I looked at my daughter, the reason I survived, and something in my chest softened. I didn't know what waited behind that chapel door, but if there was anything left unsaid, I had to hear it. So I folded the letter, zipped my bag, and braced myself for the return to the town I'd spent 10 years outrunning. The chapel felt smaller now, its wooden rafters stooping lower, the stained glass dimmed under a Charleston sky heavy with rain. It should have felt holy, but the air was thick, tinged with stale perfume and years of unspoken bitterness. I pushed open the chapel doors, Maria clinging to my side, her little fingers curled tight around mine. Heads turned before our heels touched the middle pew. Whispers snapped like dry twigs in a fire. Some gawked openly. Others stared like they'd seen someone rise from the grave. Then I saw them. Vanessa and Nathan stood near the altar, mourning dressed in couture, their sadness airbrushed like a photo shoot. Clean, practiced, hollow. Vanessa's eyes found mine. Disbelief first, then calculation. Her lips curled slowly, not in greeting, but in warning. Well, look who crawled back, she murmured, just loud enough for the whole row to hear. Let me guess, heard Daddy left a check behind? Nathan gave a soft, mirthless chuckle, the kind that sounded more like a warning than a laugh, the kind I knew all too well from childhood. I said nothing, just kept walking, head high, back straight. Even though every step made me want to run, I slipped into the last pew, the farthest spot I could find, distance as armor. I wasn't here for them. I wasn't here for theatrics. I came for closure. Maria slid next to me, her grip on my hand growing tighter, small tremors betraying her fear. I bent close and whispered, It's okay, sweetheart. We'll sit and then we go. But we both knew it wasn't okay, not even close. At the altar, the preacher cleared his throat. The service began. Stiff prayers, eulogies read like grocery lists, the kind of mourning that's more performance than grief. Not once did they say my name. No one even acknowledged I existed, let alone that I was his child. They skipped straight from childhood anecdotes to praising Vanessa's care and Nathan's heroic return trips. It was a polished tale, tight, tidy, conveniently edited. My father died exactly how he lived. Erasing me from the script, Maria rested her head on my shoulder, silent and steady. I kept my gaze forward, but every side glance, every muffled snicker hit like heat behind my ears. I didn't cry, not because I wasn't sad, but because I ran out of tears years ago. All my mourning happened long before this room filled with flowers and false grief. When the final amen echoed, the slow shuffle to the doors began. Some passed without even looking my way. One cousin gave a tight, forced nod, like he was ashamed to know me. Vanessa breezed past me like I was a shadow on the wall. Nathan came next. He paused, met my gaze. "Didn't think you'd show your face," he murmured, smirking. I locked eyes with him, unmoved. "Didn't think I would either." He gave a smug little smirk. "Don't get too cozy. This story isn't about you anymore." Then he turned and walked away without waiting for a reply. I stayed frozen on the bench, Maria's head still against me, our joined hands the only steady thing in a room full of ghosts. What they didn't know was, I wasn't here to play a part in their story. I came to close the book. The Carrington family estate looked untouched by time. The same white columns, red brick, and ivy clawing up the porch like it was strangling the house. But stepping inside after 10 years felt like stepping into ice, cold and unwelcoming. Cold, hollow, a silence that hummed with everything unsaid. The crowd had already begun to form. Distant relatives, familiar neighbors, a few men in suits. I knew most of their faces, though none met my eyes. Their chatter faded into hushed murmurs the moment I stepped in, but every darted glance hit me like a needle to the nerves. Vanessa lingered by the fireplace, swirling her wine like she was toasting an inheritance instead of mourning a loss. Nathan slouched beside her, one hand in his jacket pocket, the other cradling a glass of red like he owned the house already. They looked like party hosts, not grieving children, but smug heirs waiting for the curtain call. When I entered with Maria, Nathan's lips curled into a smirk sharp enough to cut glass. "Well, this'll be quick," he said, voice raised like a stage cue. "She's been out of the picture for years." A few chuckled, not with humor, but habit. Others suddenly found the wallpaper fascinating. I didn't respond. Let them talk. I wasn't here for their permission. I kept my coat on, cold in a room full of heat. Maria clung to me, her hand a lifeline in the storm of stares. She stayed silent, but I could feel her gaze, sharp, scanning, absorbing the cold theater around us. She seemed to read the tension in the air, which shouldn't have been there for a child her age. We settled into a corner of the parlor, well away from the crackling fire and swirling glasses. My eyes wandered, tracing the neatly hung frames that decorated every inch of the walls. Vanessa at her college graduation, Nathan posing on a yacht, sun-drenched family getaways to Hilton Head. Not a single frame bore my face, not even the childhood ones, as if I'd never existed in their timeline. I wasn't surprised. I'd been erased with precision. Vanessa noticed me looking and smiled. Sharp, deliberate, not a smile of warmth, but one of ownership, like I'd trespassed where I no longer belonged. "Stay as long as you like, Elena," she purred. "Just don't expect to be written back in." I didn't blink. I didn't flinch. Then Maria looked up at me, her gaze steady, older than her years. Not fear, not even sadness, just quiet focus, like she knew the real moment hadn't arrived yet. And in my gut, I knew she was right. The room sank into an uneasy silence. As the front door gave a long, slow creak, Thomas Bennett entered, like a man fully aware of the chaos he was about to stir. Same sharp gray suit, same polished briefcase. But this time, he carried something new. A sleek cedar box, small and gleaming, tucked tightly under his arm. Vanessa didn't even bother to lift her gaze. Nathan checked his watch mid-sip, already mentally halfway out the door. "Thank you all for coming," Bennett said, his voice soft but firm. "Per Mr. Carrington's request, we'll begin with a video message before the official reading." The atmosphere in the room suddenly changed, becoming more tense. "A video?" Vanessa said with a bitter laugh, irritation blooming. "Can't we just get to the will? We all know what it says." Nathan gave a quick nod. "Let's just get this over with. People have places to be." But Mr. Bennett remained unfazed. He strode past them, calmly placing the cedar box on the coffee table near the fire. Then he set his briefcase beside it and began to unfasten the clasps. "Your father made it very clear," he said evenly, "that this be seen before we proceed with the reading of the will." Vanessa let out a dramatic sigh and rolled her eyes. Nathan grumbled under his breath, too low to hear. Some cousins leaned in, their interest outweighing their politeness. I didn't say a word, but Maria sat up taller beside me. Her hand relaxed in mine, just a little. I glanced down at her. Her face, gentle and open, glowed with something quiet and clear. Hope. She said nothing, but I could feel the anticipation radiating from her, like she knew. Like she'd been waiting for this moment even longer than I had, and for the first time since stepping into that house, I didn't feel alone. The screen blinked once, then flickered again. Then it sharpened into clarity. A soft hum filled the quiet room, and there he was, my father. He looked older than I remembered, and thinner too. His once proud shoulders sagged into something weary. His eyes, once piercing and cold, now looked heavy, burdened with a sorrow I couldn't name. He sat behind his old oak desk, the one none of us were ever allowed to touch. The old marsh painting still hung behind him, unchanged since my childhood. He stared into the camera. "If Elena's watching this," he began, voice hoarse and quiet, "I owe you the apology I never had the courage to give." The entire room seemed to hold its breath. "I was wrong," he said plainly. "I condemned you for leaving a marriage I never understood. I thought you were fragile, self-centered. I chose the lie because it was simpler than facing the truths I wasn't ready for." He paused, fingers twitching in his lap, a nervous habit I never knew he had. "That night you came to my porch, bruised, shaking with your baby in your arms. I should have let you in. I should have held you and told you, 'You're safe now.' But I didn't. I let pride drown out love." My throat tightened. Maria reached over, slipping her small hand into mine. I kept my eyes fixed on the screen. "I told myself I was doing the right thing, that I was teaching you responsibility, but the truth is, I was punishing you for walking away, for putting yourself first, for having the strength I never gave you." Behind me, chairs shifted quietly. Someone let out a loud breath, but I didn't look. I couldn't bear to. Not yet. "I learned the truth, Elena. A few years ago, Gerald dropped off an envelope, said it was from someone who wanted to help with money to fix the house. The handwriting gave you away." He leaned in, his eyes soft but clear. "You sent money, month after month, for years silently, without thanks, without contact, just love. Even when I gave you nothing back, even when I acted like you were a ghost. You never gave up on being my daughter, even after I gave up being your father." My breath caught in my chest. I fought back tears, but they came anyway, fast, fierce, and silent. I watched you from afar, he said. Gerald told me everything. The library, Maria. Said that girl's sharp. Said she sees the world like you do. Gently. He smiled at last, a weary, quiet smile. And that was when I broke. I haven't earned your forgiveness, Elena, but if I leave anything behind, let it be this. I was wrong. You were right. You did what I was too proud to do. You protected your daughter. You left the pain behind, and you made a life worth living. He took a trembling breath. I don't want to be remembered as the father who walked away, so I changed everything. They don't know yet, but they're about to. Gasps rippled through the room like wings in flight. Someone muttered a curse. Vanessa snapped upright in her chair. Nathan clenched his jaw. Their reactions barely registered. All I ever wished for was to take pride in my children, my father said, and I am, of you, of who you became when I wasn't paying attention. The screen faded briefly, then came back with his last words. Tell Maria, thank you, for letting me be a father one last time, even from afar. Then the screen went black. Silence settled, denser than morning. No one uttered a word, but for the first time in a decade, I truly heard my father. The murmurs began before the screen fully darkened. Confusion, anger, denial. Mr. Bennet didn't wait for quiet. He adjusted his glasses, opened the leather binder, and said, The video was for context. Now, under Mr. Carrington's amended, notarized, and enforceable last will, I will begin the reading of the final allocations. Vanessa exhaled sharply through her nose. Bracing like a soldier, Nathan crossed his arms and leaned back smugly, unfazed by the video. To my daughter, Elena Elaine Carrington, Bennet read with calm authority. I leave the Charleston family estate, all its contents, and adjacent land, to her outright. I felt every head in the room whip toward me, disbelief stamped in every eye. My hands stayed frozen in my lap, Maria's still curled inside mine. In addition, Bennet continued, I leave Elena Carrington the amount of $300,000 in liquid cash, plus all funds remaining in my retirement accounts. The room shifted. There was more. To her daughter, Maria Carrington, I also leave a college trust fund totaling $100,000. My heart stuttered. Maria looked up at me, eyes wide, lips parted in stunned confusion. I wasn't sure I understood it either. Bennet took a breath and turned to the final page. To my children, Nathan and Vanessa, I leave the following: a set of family photo albums, my worn military compass, and the Bible my mother gave me on my 18th birthday. Someone across the room let out a sharp gasp. Vanessa jumped to her feet. What? Her voice cracked, already trembling. This is a mistake. It can't be real. There's no mistake, Bennet replied calmly. Your father updated the will 2 years ago. It's certified, witnessed, and officially filed. Nathan stood abruptly, jaw tight. He was sick. He wasn't thinking clearly. He knew exactly what he was doing, Bennet said, snapping the folder shut. A stunned silence filled the room before Bennet continued, this time softer, reading from a handwritten note attached to the will. He requested I read this aloud. Let them remember who was present when it counted. Let them remember the one who stayed silent, yet never stopped caring. This home belongs to the one who never asked, but always gave. Vanessa stormed out of the room. Nathan followed slowly, disbelief clinging to his steps like fog. I stayed frozen. I couldn't move, not from shock, but because, for the first time in a decade, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen. You must have manipulated him, Vanessa hissed, voice breaking as she turned toward me, wine glass forgotten in her grip. There's no way he did this on his own. You must have made him. Her accusation caught in her throat, strangled by doubt. I didn't flinch. I didn't speak. The video had spoken louder than I ever could. "You tricked him," she repeated, louder now, rage rising in her cheeks. "After everything you did, you just come waltzing back like some holy martyr?" "This is pathetic." Maria winced beside me, and I placed a steady hand on her shoulder. She didn't need protecting. I did. A small anchor to remind myself I was still standing. Nathan stepped forward, voice taut with fury. "We'll contest this. He wasn't thinking clearly. It won't hold." Mr. Bennett remained perfectly still. "Your father updated the will 2 years prior to any health concerns. It was notarized, witnessed, and filed legally. There are no grounds to challenge it." Nathan looked ready to argue again, but faltered under Bennett's unshaken stare. A stare built from decades in courtrooms, immune to drama, unmoved by arrogance. Around us, the room had fallen into a hush. A few cousins whispered nervously. Others slipped quietly out the side door, avoiding my gaze. No one dared meet my eyes, not with scorn, but with something closer to shame. Vanessa's breath had gone shallow, ragged. She looked torn between breaking down and lashing out. Her fingers trembled as she gripped the chair. She slammed the wineglass down onto the sideboard. "This is a damn joke," she hissed. She turned sharply and stormed out of the room without looking back. Nathan trailed after her, jaw locked, fury radiating off him. In a blink, the room was vacant. They thought I was gone for good a decade ago, but here I stood, and now they were the ones fleeing. The room settled into a still silence, not awkward, not strained, just at rest. I remained still, rooted to the spot. Maria sat quietly beside me, her hand still curled into mine. Her hold had softened, but she hadn't let go, and neither did I. The room was empty, but for us, the fading echoes of footsteps and whispers had vanished. Doors clicked softly behind them. Even the footsteps had dissolved into silence. I stood and moved toward the far corner of the room, where my father's old leather chair still sat by the bay window. It looked untouched, worn at the arms, creaky at the joints, shaped by the man who once ruled the house from it. I stared at the old seat for a long breath, then slowly ran my fingers along the top. "Goodbye, Dad," I breathed. "I forgive you." The words didn't stick in my throat. They didn't sting or tremble. They simply settled, like they'd always belonged there behind me. Maria remained silent. She didn't have to. The fire crackled gently, spilling soft amber light across the room. The photos above the mantel, the scuffed floorboards, even the air itself. It all felt changed now, no longer bitter, no longer burdened, only peaceful. I glanced around the house once more. For the first time in years, it didn't feel like exile. It felt like a house that had finally exhaled. Maybe not all ghosts depart. Maybe they wait for the truth, and I had finally spoken it. Weeks later, the house settled into a new kind of quiet, the kind of quiet that follows a storm. Not ruin, just rest, just healing. Maria had turned the sunroom into her art studio. Each morning I'd find her there, sketching cardinals, blue jays, wrens, every bird that fluttered through the backyard trees. Her laughter would sometimes echo through the halls, soft and bright, healing rooms that used to echo with absence. One quiet morning, an envelope arrived, plain, white, and unnathaned. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable, Gerald Adams. I opened it slowly. Gerald's hand had stayed steady, but his words wept. "Elena," it began, "the day he knew it was you. I'd never seen your father seem so small." He carried that truth with him until the very end. I folded the note gently and stepped out onto the porch. Maria sat perched on the top step, sketchpad balanced on her knees, tongue peeking out as she shaded in the wings of a hawk. I gazed across the lawn where the oak trees swayed gently in the breeze. "He saw me in the end," I said aloud, though no one asked. The girl they erased had never truly disappeared. She'd simply been waiting for the truth to find its way home.